We take a look at the Philadelphia Eagles. 2 days at a walkthrough today. We'll see what's happened in the first 2 days, what's emerged, and what's out there with John McMullen from Birds 365 on the Jacob Media YouTube channel, weekday mornings at 8 a.m. One of the discussions we had was Philadelphia's got, Hurts and Sirianni. Are they getting along? Yada, 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 all that stuff. Dallas has contractual issues all over the place. New York's got the hard knock stuff happening. Washington's the quiet team over there.
Yeah, well, Josh Harris taking over, and you can debate what he's been as an NBA owner, but, one thing right off the bat, it's not terrible. And what they've had is terrible. So he's a huge upgrade from Daniel Snyder. That's a very small bar to clear. But, yeah, they're going to be better. And a lot of it depends on Jaden Daniels, if it's going to be immediate or not. But you saw it last year with C.J. Stroud in Houston. Occasionally a rookie quarterback can hit the ground running. It doesn't happen that often, but you never know. Long term, though, I like them a lot more now. I still think it's a two-horse race in the NFC East. The Giants are in the conversation to be the worst team in football. They got some real issues that go far beyond discussions on Hard Knocks. They just don't have a ton of talent. And the Cowboys, it'll come down to the Cowboys and Eagles. And it's been that way for a while.
It is. We know a team hasn't won the division back-to-back years since 2004.
The Eagles' turn. Look at it that way.
It would be the Eagles' chance to do it. To do that, obviously, there's a lot that, has to go better than it did last year. I just want to kind of get your thoughts the first couple days here. Is there a different vibe around this team than when you left the locker room in Tampa Bay last year?
Yeah, I mean, well, that was like a wake. So yeah, that's like clearing that bar with Daniel Snyder. I mean, that's easy to clear. There was so much disappointment how last season ended, and they're sick of talking about last season. Jordan Mailata made that pretty clear. They're sick about talking about what happened last season. And, if you identify what the Eagles have come up with, I think it's, they've clearly blamed the coordinators and have moved on and gotten more experienced guys. Matt Patricia was experienced, obviously, but he in-season moved to him, which was a disaster. And then conditioning. They've made a big deal about conditioning. They essentially fired Ted Rath. They did not like the way Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter specifically finished the season, didn't think they were in shape. And they're doing everything to fix that. And they weren't the only two. But it was interesting because I remember going back to 2022, Mike, and I probably told it to you a bunch of times. I'm like, they seem better conditioned than everybody else, but they don't practice. And I was really flummoxed by that. And I was like, I don't know how they do it because they're on the field so little, and they scaled back, and they've increased things a little bit this year, but they're still, and Nick has said, they're still going to be bottom of the league when it comes to on-field preparation. But in 2022, they seem to be better conditioned.
Well, real quick on that, why is that something that you're happy about? Like, we're going to, you know what I'm saying? Does that sound ridiculous? We're going to be bottom of the league when it comes to on-field conditioning. Like, why would that be?
Because I don't think it's not, I meant on-field practice time, not on-field conditioning. But
still, either way, is that something that you're supposed to be proud of? Like, to me, that's not something I'm boasting.
From the Eagles' perspective, they look at it as a cost-benefit thing. And it's not, and Vic Fangio kind of talked about it yesterday. Back in the old days, you had 40 training camp practices, and you had plenty of time to get everything you wanted and all the ducks in a row when it came to a preparation standpoint. And he said, it's not like that anymore. And you gotta go. And the spring, you got to install stuff. Day one, you got to be ready to go. And that's the way the league has changed. So the Eagles, and it's organizational. It's not Nick Sirianni. It's more, from Jeffrey Lurie up top, Howie Roseman, everybody, have decided to get to week one as healthy as possible, because you don't have the time to do what you used to do anyway. Mm-hmm. And I don't necessarily disagree. I think they're right about that. But the difference is the conditioning part of it in 2022 seemed like it was top of the league. And last year they seemed to have a big problem with it. So maybe that's just as simple as, ingraining it into the heads of the players, and that, when you're left to your own devices, can't stop. You gotta stay in shape. You got to keep going, and we'll see how it shakes out. But they've made a number of tweaks, and, for all the talk of scapegoating Sean Desai and Brian Johnson on the coaching side, they scapegoated Ted Rath on the conditioning side. So that's what they've pointed to, at least from their actions, that those were the two issues in the collapse last season.
Right. You wrote about that at Sports Illustrated, that the emphasis is on conditioning. I like the picture, too, because it's Jordan Davis. And I wonder if that's a guy, or if there are people that stand out that do, this time of the year, he's in the best condition of his life, or he's, that kind of stuff. But is that something that is apparent and noticeable?
Yeah, visually, yeah. But, it's not, if you think about it from a bodybuilding perspective versus a strength perspective, sometimes you're training for different things. So he looks cosmetically better. He looks leaner, slimmer. But, can he play 50 NFL snaps at the level of his first 15? Because he's really good on those first 15. And then it starts to have diminishing returns. And you have Vic Fangio, who's not, he's not Jim Schwartz if you look at his history. Jim liked to rotate and come at you in waves. And Vic has always been more of, I got my guys and they're going to be out there. Mm-hmm. And he wants Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter to be out there as much as possible. And if this were last year, it wouldn't have worked. And we're going to see if it's going to work this year.
John McMullen, Birds 365 on the Jacob Media YouTube channel, weekday mornings at 8 a.m. And read his stuff over at Sports Illustrated as well. Everybody's kind of anticipating that cornerback room and all that. I guess the thought I had was, does that mean that a lot of these guys are going to have to play in the preseason, like the 3 games? With the 3 games now, I know we had it last year, but Darius Slay might not play. But what about the rest of these guys?
Well, yeah. Some of the younger guys have to play, just from a rep standpoint, just from getting better. They're not proven yet, so it's but they have so many bodies. I mean, they have it's outrageous. They have like 20 defensive backs, 14 corners. I mean, if Vic is comfortable with Quinyon Mitchell and he says, all right, he's ready to go, I feel comfortable with him, he's not going to play a lot. Because, again, they want to keep him healthy. Right. And he's throwing a lot at him. He's played all 3 corner positions both days. If you go back to the spring, he was playing dime linebacker. They're throwing a bunch of different stuff at him, and he doesn't look overwhelmed. But, guys like Ringo and Rakes, yeah, they got to play. And they're going to play some. And even Rodgers coming off his suspension. But they do have, again, all those bodies down to Mario Goodrich and Perry Nickerson and all those guys that if you start to feel comfortable, they're going to be the guys you see in preseason because they want to keep their key players in bubble wrap.
Yep, and I know a lot of battles there. Quinyon Mitchell, yes, I thought, by the way, I got to ask you this because you had a lot of questions for Fangio. Is he going to be is he going to be fun to talk to after these games? Or
He's phenomenal. He's honest. He's honest, which is very rare. Very rare. I mean, he just tells you. You heard what he said about Bryce Huff.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, like, is he – well, like, now you hear the stuff about, the Miami, and he rubbed people the wrong – like, he's saying, Bryce Huff, is he good enough against the run? No, not right now.
not right now. But the thing is, if you read it in time – and the problem is, and this is why people like 99% of the coaches, and Nick Sirianni and Howie Roseman as a GM and everybody else talks the way they talk, because when you are honest, people take words out of context, and you got a bunch of different people taking a baton and going a bunch of different directions. And like a lot of people took that Bryce Huff stuff negative. And if you read the context of the whole comment, it was basically, well, right now, no, he's not ready, but he thinks he's going to be ready and he thinks he can do it. I go back to Jeff Stoutland, who's similar on the offensive side of the ball. He's not going to talk as much, but Jeff's very honest. And, going back to when Jordan Mailata, way back, he was set to go his first start against San Francisco at the time, and Nick Bosa was there. We were all like, this is going to be a massacre. And Jordan held up, and it was pretty amazing, and the rest is history, and he's got two $60 million contract extensions. But at the time, Jeff Stoutland was very honest, and he was like, do I think he can play? Yes. Do I know he can play? No. I have no idea. And, that's sort of like what Vic was saying about Bryce Huff. But almost everybody takes it negatively, but he just doesn't care, Mike. He's like, he just doesn't care. And he's
right.
like, I don't give a what about what people think. And to me, it's awesome because I just love honesty. And like I was asking him about the cornerback, I asked him about Bradbury at one point, about cornerbacks moving to safety, and there's been some successful ones, and he shut me down, and I'm glad, because I'm thinking, well, there was Charles Woodson, and there's Rod Woodson. Ronnie Lott was, for people that don't know, was a corner before he moved to safety. I'm thinking of Hall of Fame players. These are Hall of Fame players.
Yeah.
And Vic correctly said, well, it ain't easy. And I'm hey, have at it, man. Correct me,
Right.
He's honest. I that's all I want. And he's honest to a fault. And he did it with Nakobe Dean. A lot of people took that negatively. And he said Nakobe, when he was talking about him, he's proven in college. And a lot of people took that negative. Well, why is that negative? He was a great player in college. He hasn't done anything at the pro level yet. That's just factual. I mean, but a lot of people take that a negative way.
You mentioned Bryce Huff. If Bryce Huff isn't, I don't want to say, is it fair to say if he's not on the level of Reddick? I don't know that they think he should be on the level of Reddick. But if he's just not on that level, is that something that that worries them?
Well, I think what else was missed about what Vic said, they already know he's a good pass rusher. And that's the floor. Can he do the other stuff? He's going to be a good pass rusher. So your worst case scenario is he's what he was with the Jets, and he's just a situational guy who's going to have, he's led the NFL 2 consecutive years. Not one, not last year, 2 consecutive years. He was actually better in 2022 than 2023 in pressure percentage. So when he pins his ears back and go gets the quarterback, I don't think anybody's going to have an issue with him. But Vic's going to ask him to do a bunch. We just talked about with Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, he wants his guys to be on the field. Bryce Huff is one of those guys. He's got to go from 440 snaps to 850, 900. Can he do that, and can he hold up and run support And can he be a flat defender? Vic demands that his edge guys occasionally, not a lot, but you're going to see the curveball that people hate. They're going to drop into coverage, and they're going to do that more with Vic than they did with Jonathan Gannon or Sean Desai. He does it more. So that's the kind of stuff he hasn't been asked to do. And, we're at day 2, and that's what Vic is saying. It's still a work in progress when it comes to that stuff. But as a pass rusher, that's the first thing he said. That's the floor. They know he can rush the passer.
John McMullen's with us looking at the Eagles. I know it's early, and training camp, the Eagles have been littered with players over the past who have excelled at training camp, and then we've never heard about. But is there anybody who's been an early surprise that might be on the radar?
Well, the biggest surprise to me, I wrote about over at Sports Illustrated, and that's that, Grant Calcaterra is the second tight end. And, it seems to be his job to lose, which I thought would be more of a competition. And Kellen Moore also has been using a lot of 12 personnel packages. So that would mean that, he would play a lot and essentially would be a starter. That's going to be their default setting, because we constantly talk about third receiver, and you start to think about it. Nick said, back in the spring, he was talking about you can go about it a bunch of different ways. It could be Saquon Barkley as that other weapon. It could be a second tight end as that other weapon. And, maybe Grant Calcaterra is the other guy rather than worrying about, is it going to be Paris Campbell? Is it going to be John Ross? Is it going to be somebody else? And that's my biggest surprise, is that Grant Calcaterra, who's caught 9 passes in 2 NFL seasons, seems to be a cemented player on this roster. But Nick likes him, and it seems like Kellen Moore likes him as well. And that has been a big of a surprise. There haven't been a ton of splashes on either side of the ball, to be honest. But the offense has been very sharp. Not a lot of splash plays, but, you probably read, you saw the ball didn't hit the ground. And when it did, I called it a Sam Bradford practice for Jalen Hurts. That's what Sam used to do. And he was so accurate, and especially on 7-on-7s, the ball would never hit the ground. Well, the ball never hit the ground except when it was dropped. I think Dallas had it dropped, and it might have been C.J. Uzomah had the other drop, or was ripped away at least by Avonte Maddox. So very sharp offensively, and the defense has been, they were great in the spring, and they haven't been nearly as good. And maybe some of that is just they're much more uncertain as far as personnel. He's rotating corners. All 3, Rodgers was the starter opposite Slay day 1. Day 2, it was Ringo. Mitchell's gotten first-team reps both days. Everybody's gotten first-team reps at linebacker. Devin's gotten, Devin White's the one default setting, but N'Kobe's gotten first-team reps. Obviously, Zach Vaughn. Even Ben Van Sumeren and even Jeremiah Trotter Jr. got a couple first-team reps before he had some cramping issues yesterday. So they're trying everybody at linebacker. And the only reason Oren Burks isn't in that list is because he tweaked his knee. They're trying to find out who their best options are at linebacker. And all that rotation probably hurts you when it comes to, making plays and being consistent. But that's not, practice is not about winning or, it's about getting better. It's about evaluating first. And they're evaluating a lot on the defensive side of the ball.
When you look at Kellen Moore's offense, is it noticeably different than a Nick Sirianni offense?
Yeah, well, there's a lot more motion, so people are excited by that. They think that's a fix. A lot more bunch formations, not Somebody asked me about under center. I haven't seen a ton of that yet. I don't know why people want that. That's not what Jalen Hurts is. So the vast majority is going to be shotgun or pistol, and it should be, and more two tight end than I expected. So, I mean, I expected the motion. Kellen's very honest about that. He likes it. His dad used it when he was a kid. He was very effective as a quarterback himself in college with it. So to him, he likes it. And so he's going to use it. People are excited about that because the Eagles didn't use motion. But I caution them. The Eagles had the best run in franchise history over a large, extended period of time. Whatever, 29 or 32, I think it was, wins. And they were, static for the most part. And the second part of that people fail to realize, that came after the 2-5 start in 2021, Nick's first season, when everybody wanted him fired. And it was about scaling things back for the quarterback. Because you remember early, they were throwing the ball all over the place. They were doing all, and they kind of realized they put too much on Jalen Hurts' plate. So, man, I think there's a lot of revisionist history of A, why they did it, and B, and B, how successful they were doing it before, obviously, the collapse last season, which is, and I get it, there's a lot of recency bias and people remember what they've seen, but they did it for a reason and they had a lot of success. So, maybe the pendulum effect isn't going to be as exciting as people think, but we'll see. There will be more motion.
All right. Well, there you go. More motion. 2 weeks from today, the Eagles back on the field in Baltimore against the Ravens, and you can listen to the game right here on 97.3 ESPN.